so the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Energy Department, and the Environmental Protection Agency have all been hiring back hundreds of the staff that they let go under orders from Elon Musk's Doge. That's after court rulings that said that this was unlawful. But they've been rehired on administrative leave, so they're not able to work, although they are being paid for the moment. That's why while those court appeals work themselves out. Meanwhile, at NASA, more layoffs are to come. There have been 23 so far, including the chief scientist Catherine Calvin. And since Trump ordered an end to working from home for federal staff, well, Reuters is reporting that a lot of NASA staff have come back to the Washington office to find no desks and cockroaches roaming around the place. Now, 23 out of a workforce at NASA of 18,000 isn't a huge amount, but other agencies are being gutted. So, for instance, the National Science Foundation that was set up in the 50s to keep the US ahead on science and engineering, they've lost a tenth of their staff, and that could go up to half of their staff. And Politico is reporting that includes all of its in-house experts who have already been axed. Thousands of jobs are also under threat at the National Institutes of Health. That's the largest funder of medical research anywhere in the world. They've already terminated some grants, frozen some funding, and, for instance, have scrapped a study into the health of gay people already. The institute is now, of course, under the purview of a man called RFK Jr., the new health secretary, and he's known for his criticism of vaccines that he's made in the past. At the moment, the institutes have stopped accepting grant applications, as reported in the press, that include any reference to mRNA vaccines. As we know, the kind of vaccines that saved millions of people from COVID.
So, Peter, what about work in universities? How is that affected?
So universities, they are also dependent on funding from the government in large part. So it's not good news either. Trump's effectively cut $400 million in funding from Columbia University, meaning that research on cancer, autism, Alzheimer's has had to be put on hold. Johns Hopkins University depended on funding from US aid. So they've lost $800 million. As it stands, they've had to cut more than 2,000 staff. That's the largest cut in its history. And it's jeopardized studies on childhood diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, for instance. Even foreign universities are in the firing line. So Nature has just reported that in the UK, in the EU, and in Australia, researchers that receive funding from the US have been sent questionnaires to fill out, asking them, for instance, if they are working on topics like diversity, climate justice, or so-called gender ideology. And you can imagine what will happen if they respond in the affirmative.
Now, it also emerged this week, Peter, speaking of all of this, that a French researcher was denied entry into the United States.
Yeah, so Philippe Baptiste, he's the French Minister for Higher Education and Research. He told the AFP that this academic who worked for France's National Centre for Scientific Research was travelling to Houston for a conference when his phone and his laptop were taken and searched. Philippe said he was refused entry to the US because he expressed a personal opinion on the Trump administration's research policy. Now, AFP sources said US authorities accused the man of, quote, hateful and conspiratorial messages and, quote, showed hatred towards Trump and could be qualified as terrorism. But they now have dropped those charges.
So, Peter, as a final question then, is it true that Trump is also censoring certain words from the scientific publications themselves?
Yeah, and we actually saw this from the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention in the first term. If you remember, they kind of banned of sorts words like fetus and evidence-based. Now we've got a whole new list of words that they're stopping their researchers from having in publications, both at the CDC and in other publications. So any pending papers that include any of these words, like gender, LGBT, and non-binary, will be pulled by the CDC. All of this obviously amounts to a hostile environment for research.